Oh, okay.
He brought up,
Okay.
it's the marriage amendment.
Yes.
It's a big thing here in the state, obviously.
Yes.
I was married once. I'm good friends with my ex-wife, but he's actually my attorney.
Uh-huh.
Which I hope not to need to. I've got stats from 2009 from the Center for Disease Control and the National Survey of Family Growth.
Right.
In 2009, there were 2,077,000 marriages. Marriage rate was 6.8 per thousand. Divorce rate was 3.4 per thousand, which is exactly half.
Right.
Why? And then this is this is the part that's kind of weird, but it's often associated with press, Journal of Marriage and Family Therapy. Percentage of men who say they'd have an affair if they never get caught. 74%. What exactly?
I want you to know I'm the 26%. Okay.
I understand that. That's fine. My question is, what exactly are we protecting the sanctity of marriage for? If the divorce rate is 50%.
Well, I guess
I think that government does not have a role in whether people should get married or not. I think that's totally a freedom issue. People who want to get married, I think that's fine. If they choose not to get married, I think that's fine. I have a real problem with government discriminating against people if they do get married. That's where I have the biggest problem. And that's what the government is doing. And one of the reasons, there are a lot of reasons for the high divorce rate. One of the reasons is that people in poverty game the system, and they realize that if they're not married, they're going to qualify for benefits much better than if they get married. Okay, that's not the only reason for divorce, but I want you to know it's an important one. And I get extremely concerned when we get a health care bill that will in fact require a couple, and you've heard the numbers already, income of $60,000 total, private insurance, and require that they pay $10,425 more for their health insurance if they are married or if they get married. That is horrendous discrimination against married people. And I think that is horrific government policy to discriminate against married people. And it is my position that people that choose not to marry, or if they want to live together unmarried, should pay the same rates. Okay? Let me give you some of the other numbers. The discrimination against married people in Obamacare is so huge that the tax credits, and see the way this is set up, people pay very high premiums and then they get some of that offset with tax credits. That's the way it's set up. That's why it's administered by the IRS in part. Okay, 86% of the tax credits go to people unmarried, and only 14% of the tax credits go to married people. That is how huge the discrimination is against married people in Obamacare. So under Obamacare, married people, private insurance, are going to have three options. One is to pay the penalty and therefore suffer the enormous discrimination against them because they're married. That's one option. Second option is divorce and live together. Maybe I should say divorce and be friends afterwards. The third option is to drop their health insurance. And I assure you, many of them will take options 2 and 3. I can't predict numbers because I can't predict the future. But many married people will choose to divorce and live together or drop their health insurance because they won't be able to afford it. I mean, how many people making $60,000 have an extra 10 grand in their pockets that they don't need for house payments or things like that? And so be prepared for the divorce rate to skyrocket because it will under Obamacare. And be prepared for the cost of the government to skyrocket. Last CBO estimate was that Obamacare is going to cost us $1.7 trillion over 10 years. All money that we don't have. All money that's added on to the deficit. It's going to be much worse than that, in part because married couples by the millions are going to drop their insurance. And CBO assumes these people are going to stay married and keep their insurance and therefore paying into the government system. I assure you, many of them won't do that. I mean, they don't have the money. They won't be able to afford to. So they'll either divorce or they'll drop their insurance. Therefore, the income to the government goes way down and the $1.7 trillion goes way up. And this is part of my message to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. And I'm very blunt, saying you are not going to get the money that you've been promised under Obamacare, because that money will not be there. So expect to have the reimbursement rates go in the tank, okay? And expect your profit levels to get pretty ugly. Maybe I should say loss levels to get pretty ugly, because the money isn't going to be there for the system.
There was a hand up back here.
Yep. I think I'll take one more question and then we'll call it good. Members of the press, you think you want? Okay. Anybody else want to raise the question? Adam, did you want to raise the question?
Sure.
Yep.
Kind of curious, have you talked to Waltz about the fact that, I mean, not only do they not have a balanced budget, they haven't even passed a budget in the last, I want to say, 3 years.
In the Senate, that's right.
About that, and then,
Right.
when I want to say, but if you get to Washington, what, how do you think that you're going to go about actually beginning to have at least a budget?
Okay, yeah, very good question. How are you going to, let me put it this way, how are you going to deal with the budget in Washington? I'm one of these guys that bargains tough. Okay, I bargain tough. I want to say people like doing business with me because they know they can trust me. And if, for instance, I'm selling somebody a tractor for 32 grand, which I did this spring, I'm going to tell people everything I know about that, good, bad, and indifferent, because that's just who I am. You know, I'm going to be straight with people. I'm straight, but I'm tough, and that's what we need in Washington. But you know, you need somebody that's been in business, somebody that knows what a balance sheet is, knows that you have to balance the books. You know, you take people that have worked for the government all their life, it's not on the table for them. They don't think along those lines. They live in a fantasy world. So you need people that, you know, that are able to be managers. Now, let me then close with this. I am convinced that when the citizens of any congressional district, including southern Minnesota, elect somebody to be their representative in Congress, they are basically hiring that person to be a good manager of the nation's resources, especially financial. And that all-important job description and task isn't even on the table for Mr. Waltz. I mean, it just doesn't exist for him. He is elsewhere. And when it comes to losing $100 billion in Medicaid fraud, I mean, I'm traveling all over the state saying, we have to stop this. I mean, Mr. Waltz doesn't say, boo, it's not on the table for him. He lives in a different world. And I don't think we can afford that anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. The issues are very important. And my purpose here is to clear up the false statements, and I have done as much as I can. And unfortunately, I probably am going to have to push this at some future point because Mr. Walls is not holding up to it. Thank you. Till we meet again.
I'm Mary Ann with the Winona.
You know, it's going to be